Okay, on to our last and final question. So, AI right now is like the buzzword. Everyone is talking about AI. So the thing is that this question will actually be on automation and AI. So the thing is that a lot of people are very afraid of AI because they feel that this is something that could potentially replace them, and it makes them redundant. So the thing is that, how do you think, all of you, how do you think that you can, design a future of work where technology can actually complement rather than take away from, whoever that's actually using this technology?
As from a design perspective, I think AI is everywhere, but I think that the fact is it's right now it's being used to help support ideation, brainstorming, visualization, but and it has been very helpful. It hasn't really replaced anybody. I think it's really augmented our ability to generate ideas quickly. But it's limited, right? Because I have not seen an effective use of it to actually build models. I haven't seen an effective use of it to build technical drawing sets. But it's really good at helping us get to design ideas really quickly. So in the past, if you needed a person to render a bunch of ideas, it could take, a week or so. Now you can, using, DALL-E or Midjourney, you can generate ideas instantly. And so that kind of the ability to move quickly through a design process is super helpful to us. It's not replacing anybody. It's just helping us get ideas out there quicker. It's making us more productive. I think as it evolves and as it gets more mature, my hope is that it will help us do, tasks like model building effectively, maybe even developing CAD drawings, that sort of thing. But there's always as long as we're human-centric designers, there's going to be need for humans involved in the process regardless. I don't think there's ever necessarily going to be a time where we're having machines design spaces for us. But they're certainly going to help us get there quicker, I think, for the most part.
I'm definitely more Star Trek than Blade Runner. It's without, at the risk of taking the conversation to some too far high up level, but I like to sort of equate the rise of AI to our agricultural revolution, right? That our human species went through. Millions of years ago, we were all hunter-gatherers doing exactly the same thing. Everyone was doing the same thing. And then it took a agricultural revolution to really allow people to store up more food and start thinking more than just survival, right? And that opened up a lot of cultural avenue. We created scholars, we created military geniuses. It opened up a lot of possibilities. And I think rise of AI will have a similar impact to us because it will open up and make us more available to new possibilities and new roles. One of the most immediate things that I'm hoping to see and we're working towards is that the automation has always been, in our industry at least, been a very deterministic automation. And what I mean by that is, again, going back to my initial role in the industry, working as a programmer, I was at the mercy of what did that user mean that he wanted one button meeting start, right? And there's so many different elements in that room where I had to figure out what did that guy really mean? Do I turn the lights on 50% or do I close the drape or, turn the mic up or keep it muted? Or, there's so many things, variables that most people don't think about as a user because they're not technical, right? And as a programmer, I'm sitting there going, okay, there are a gazillion things that can turn on and off. How do I automate this? Yeah. And oftentimes the way I think about it was very different from one user A, user B, user C, right? So the limitations of automation so far in our industry has been quite limiting and it never delivered on that promise of easy user experience because everything had to be very deterministic. But I think with the rise of AI, I'm hoping we can incorporate some of these user habits and you can learn from how people are using the system. And then in fact, then reincorporate these automations more as a cognitive contextual-based automation rather than deterministic.
I think automation and AI, they kind of really go hand in hand. I think there have been quite a lot of big improvements in this area. So people have talked about the Zoom Companion AI, Microsoft Copilot. Again, these are tools that has helped us raise our productivity. I don't think it's cost anyone their jobs, like what Tim mentioned. Fully agree. But what it's made possible is, for the existing group of people to be more efficient, or basically it means you need less people to output the same amount of work. Both are very compelling for any large organization. I think for, what Paul spoke about in terms of technology, I think I can relate quite well to this. I think for automation, within small rooms, small meeting spaces, I think we do that quite well. For larger, more bespoke spaces is where a lot of the improvements still has been made, like training rooms, like town halls, like large boardrooms. We've seen the rise of, new camera technology. Paul, I think you probably have something to add to this as well, where you see AI working in a way that eliminates the need for operators, right? And I would see this as more of an evolution other than a revolution. It's not bang, something new, but it's very subtle, right? The camera, the system can understand, who's speaking, and it could go to them, right? That's impressive, but you've kind of seen that before. But now you can differentiate between two people talking to each other in the same room and understand that these two people are conversing between themselves rather than talking to the far end. Whenever someone speaks, it identifies the best possible camera angle, on the multiple cameras in a room.
I have a question for you, Chris, because it's interesting because I kind of want to know your opinion is, there's an intermixing of terms, smart, automation, AI, and I just want to know how much of it is marketing speak versus reality, because I've seen people advertise smart camera systems, and then all of a sudden it's AI camera systems, but it's kind of doing the same thing, right? And when I say that, for instance, is it really getting smarter when someone coughs in the room and all of a sudden their face is on the screen versus when they're actually talking? And so how smart is that? I mean, how intelligent really is that? Is it just simply, being triggered, and is it actually learning not to do that next time? So I just like to get your point of view on the difference between those terms, because I hear it all the time, and I think people are kind of just using marketing speak to...
Sure. I think smart refers to the fact that the technology is available and you could possibly do this and that. But taking it a step further is the technology being able to differentiate when it's implemented and when it's not, right? So, like I said, it's a bit of evolution. Maybe if you take a very broad perspective, the technological gain is pretty incremental, right? But it makes, in our opinion, a very big difference in terms of user experience, right? I mean, the example you just mentioned, someone coughs and the camera goes to him, right? The system is smart, right? Because there was audio coming out and the camera went there, right? But, something with, AI, automation and the improvements, the system now knows the difference, right? If you cough or you just have a very quiet sidebar, it knows not to capture you, right? And actually, in the grand scheme of things, if you're talking about, big meetings, with C-suite and everything, this improvement to user experience makes actually a lot of difference, right?
So, it's really interesting you talk about the fears of AI, and I sort of say this, to say AI is like a chainsaw, right? So we think in the room, chainsaw, we think about horror movie, like killing zombies with a chainsaw, right? But if you were a lumberjack or an arborist, that is an essential tool that you will use daily, that if you did not use, you would be 10 times less productive than your counterparts who do. But most of us aren't lumberjacks or arborists, so we don't think of it that way. We see what is commonly distributed to us through the media, through films and stuff like that. And the truth is, we don't manufacture chainsaws to kill zombies. That's the truth, right? Despite that's what we all think. And I think that's an important way to think about AI, is that obviously to capture people's attention, to capture news, there is going to be these slightly, cliche topics. You're going to lose your job. You're going to get this. Am I going to be honest? Yes, there are jobs that are going to be displaced by AI. But if you get something that's displaced by AI, you will realize that it creates so many things as well. So yeah, that's what I say to people. Go and think about it in that perspective. To the automation side of things, I'm super excited about where it can go and what it can do. Like, let's just think about AI in this room right now. We could combine that same thing where you were saying speaker tracking, right? So we could be using the camera feeds in here right now that space while Simon's talking and he's getting closer to the mic. I'm going to dynamically adjust the level on that mic based on his distance. That's really simple when you think about it.
Yeah.
We haven't done that yet, and we could. As you begin to work more with AI, your brain will go to, I understand that tool. Here's the things where I can apply it to. Now, work in tech, work in technology environments like this, so that's where my brain goes to. Like you were mentioning earlier, Tim, about how you can use that for design and thinking around generating new designs. So imagine being sat with a client and saying, you're thinking of these kind of color schemes and this kind of thing, something like this, and you use generative AI to pull up an idea. Yeah, but maybe a bit more of this color, a bit more kind of the accents of this. That visualization will be incredibly useful during the brainstorming process to then perform a refined design.
We have clients giving us those. Yeah, we have clients giving us stuff they've generated themselves in Midjourney and Dolly, just saying, hey, here's what I'm thinking. And clients would never be, clients can barely draw a stick figure. So the ability for them now to actually hand us something useful is really amazing.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I find that invaluable. And for me, I think what it's geared is it's increased my ability to be creative. So tech, engineering background, I've always been admiring people with design and creativity, but now, because I couldn't draw, I could go to Midjourney, and if I want to try and convey a message in a slide deck or a presentation, I can go and type in that prompt. We've really got an opportunity to sort of supercharge our powers each individually using AI.
It's an interesting evolution of this is where some of the AI is coming into play, at least in the architecture industry, is in supportive roles like pre-construction, estimating. And so because you've got these huge databases of estimates for projects at various sizes, the models are learning all that and starting to create project estimates. And so, but what's interesting from an AI perspective or from an AV perspective is it's generating stuff on its own based on historical data and not necessarily accounting for the evolution of AV technology. So it's not as accurate as you want it to be because it's not taking into account that the technology's changed, specifications on the technology changes all the time, the way it's used is changing, but AI is being used in ways to help generate some of the back-end data for these projects.
Well, I imagine if the estimation is more on the macro level, it could be quite accurate.
It does, getting you down to cost per square foot, those kinds of things, it's good, but you still have to, to create specific BOQs, you still got to go in there and do the work.
That's why we have that little line reminder at the end of every AI generated content. Make sure to double check. But I think that's where, again, very exciting to see how we're evolving and the tools are becoming more powerful so that we can be more productive and it's becoming more intelligent. At a personal note, I remember actually trying to figure out where to position my new hire. And initially, I wanted to do a bit of a research. And so one of the parameters I looked at was geographically, how central is this salesperson? It's similar to sort of traveling salesman question, but my parameter was travel time. So I mapped out all the cities that this person potentially could go to and then try to map out the flight time between the two. And it ended up being about 10 different cities. So I made a table and started Googling flight to Ho Chi Minh, to Singapore, to Korea. And every search took about 5 to 10 minutes for me to do, type and verify. And I thought, I went through about 2 or 3 and I realized, oh man, this is gonna take a long time. So you know what I did? I went to ChatGPT and said, here's a list of cities. Can you give me the flight time between the 2 different cities? It came up with a long list and I said, can you turn that into a table? And it turned it into an ASCII table, copied and paste. And literally spent less than 10 minutes. And half that time was me trying to figure out what to ask, how to ask it. But if I had known the prompt better, I would have been even more quicker, right? So that was one sort of personal experience where it opened up my eyes and realized, oh, there is actual practical implication.
Building prompts is the new coding.
Yes, correct, right.
And I think we were talking about that before. I was saying that those three new languages, which C-suite, IT, and design. There's a fourth one now, which is AI, speaking AI, which is ability to write those craft and those prompts, pull it all together. And it's really interesting because when you start going through the different models, it's a slightly different variation. I say it's like a different dialect, like a regional dialect. You get the core fundamentals, but then it might be a little bit different for this tool versus that tool. And I think it's a really interesting time. Something I'm thinking about from the AV perspective is the very latest generations, ChatGPT. Sam Altman's been out doing that showcase as well around the voice interactivity. And that is, and he was even saying, I use this myself, much in the same way, so just talking to it rather than typing. Now, why is that interesting? Well, I think about that from a workplace perspective. And if we all start doing that, I'm certainly going to get a very noisy workplace. And am I going to need AI collaboration spaces in my workplace going forward? Am I going to need open zones, which is more about people talking and brainstorming?
Privacy plays a big role in this, right? Because I think that the more data the models have, the better they are. But I think especially in workplace, should the camera systems in a workplace be able to tell when you're cold or you're hot and be able to make changes automatically but the problem is it requires you to, give personal data, face recognition, other things. And so it's really that balance that I think the AI is going to have to really optimize for individuals. It's going to be an interesting evolution of how privacy plays a role in that as well.
I guess, one very prevailing thing that each of you actually mentioned about is that AI is definitely here to stay. There's a lot more improvements that can be done. It's not going to replace people per se, but it's more of like how you embrace it and work with it together and grow much stronger. So, we reached the end of the discussion. So the thing is that I think what would be good for our audience is to actually have each of you to have some key takeaways you feel that very strongly for, and you think that this is information that would benefit our audience. So maybe Tim, you'd like to start the ball?
Well, I think, this whole conversation was centered around how can we be better at integrating design and technology. And I think technology is going to play a bigger and bigger role in the way that we design our workplaces, and it has and will continue, and it'll just get bigger. So it's important for my industry to be more proactive about including technology in the initial stages of design, not as an afterthought, not as an add-on, which it sort of has been relegated. So I think in this conversation, it's been great because all of this information that's been provided by these experts here are conversations that we need to have at the very starts of projects with clients in the room and talking about the value that they place in technology and how it plays a role in the user experience. And so I think going forward, it's finding a way to make sure that the technology voice is one that's sitting at the table at the very starts of these projects.
Certainly, and I think it's been a great conversation, and it's highlighting this need, as we've just been discussing about design, technology, leadership all coming together. We're in an interesting state in the industry right now. We've had a lot of change, a lot of advances to the way we work, company cultures, structures, workplace design, real estate, office. We're seeing technology development going at an almost exponential rate of increasing and changing. I think now more than ever, especially when we're looking at tools like AI coming in, it's more important to focus on diverse perspectives very early on. And that means it's essential to get technology representation, senior business leadership, design teams all together right at the beginning, so people can hear the different views, they can understand them, and then they can share thoughts and content. And I think that's really going to drive us forward as we go forward in this really exciting time.
I think it was a great session, because, we have a lot of differing opinions or different perspectives rather, from obviously end user services, manufacturing, design, technology, and real estate. I think the key takeaway for me is we know that technology is here to help us, right? But the way we work, we know that if we work in isolation in our own individual fields, right, and try to put together something which enhances the end user experience, doesn't always lead to favorable outcomes. So in understanding what technology can do, has also led us to, kind of explore our roles more deeply and to understand what we can perhaps do better in, communicating with each other in this process.
First of all, I'm truly encouraged to have had this conversation, right? There have been many sort of instances where I did reach out to some other disciplines hoping to have this type of conversation and see if I can provide some value. But not everyone feels this way, but it's good to be sitting in a table with everyone here to have this conversation. And it sounds like many of us do feel like we can learn from each other and create a better experience. So I'm encouraged, and it's great. And I'd like to encourage everyone to reach out across the aisle and see if you can learn something. Now, I think my key takeaway here is there's so many tools that are becoming available to us. The change will not stop, whether we like it or not. So do you want to be the person who gets left behind and holding on to the old way of doing things, or do you embrace what's coming, what's possible, and dream up something bigger? I think it's very exciting to be at this juncture in our industry and how we're evolving, because it does open up so many possibilities. So it's exciting. I'm encouraged, and I think what I'm hoping that our viewers will take away is it's okay not to know everything, but there are people out there who can teach you, and that doesn't make you a less of a person. Makes you a stronger individual contributor, because it will lead to better things, elevated user experience. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we have reached the end of the conversation. Thank you all for taking part in this. Help us to like and share.